Throughout the summer and fall months, we're inviting heads of state agencies to provide insight on the changes made during the 2019 legislative session and the challenges that still need to be addressed. Joining me now is Commissioner Paul Schnell of the Department of Corrections. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Shortly after your appointment as commissioner, you came on the program and talked about the challenges facing your department. First and foremost was the need for more staff. This budget includes money for 67 new corrections officers over the next 2 years. So how important is this new funding?
Well, this is critical. I mean, remember that the staff really come as a part of a broader need to have better safety and security within our prisons for both the sake of staff as well as for those that we incarcerate there. And so these staff will be really critical. We had hoped, and the initial ask was for 120, but this will be a great start toward allowing us to better staff those areas where we think risk is greatest.
And I also read that there are many open positions just due to retirements and job changes. So there's a big hiring push going on for the Department of Corrections. How does the tight labor market play into this? Are there enough interested and qualified candidates? And do candidates need experience?
Yeah, I think this is I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's an important one. The labor market is affecting all of us. And I think in corrections, we're mindful of the fact that we need to draw people who really want to help serve their fellow Minnesotans in this critical and important role that ultimately helps turn around the lives of some of the people that are involved in the criminal justice system, that ultimately we hope will become proactive and engaged, fully engaged members of our communities. So we're looking for those, and those people are out there, we believe. We are thinking differently about how we attract people to this job. There are many benefits to working for the DOC and these really tough public safety jobs. At the same time, I think the rewards are tremendous. We do believe that there are people out there, but we are also recognize that we need to be creative.
What does your ideal candidate look like?
Our ideal candidate really, at the end of the day, looks like you. It looks like anyone who I think has a heart to say there is a possibility that people can change their lives. There is a need to provide stability and order. And with people who have that sense, the ability to do that, and we provide training for all of that, this is an incredible career that can provide, I think, amazing experiences, as well as you have the chance to change people's lives, which is really an incredible reward.
An ombudsman for the Department of Corrections was established in 1972, but its budget was zeroed out in 2003. The legislature has now allocated funds to reestablish the position. So what does the position of an ombudsman for the Department of Corrections mean for both the staff and the inmates?
Well, the ombudsman becomes a role that is independent. They are a third party, so they report directly to the governor, and a family member or somebody who's incarcerated, either in the Department of Corrections or in any of our county jails, can use the ombudsman as a place to lodge a complaint and have that complaint looked into or addressed. The benefit of ombudsmen, even for places like the Department of Corrections or even sheriff's offices, is it can become a third party to take a look at, are there things practices that should be done differently, or should we resource an area or a need differently? And so that's one of the places where the ombudsman can actually be a benefit to our staff, as well as to the people who are incarcerated, whether it's in the Department of Corrections or, as I said, in any of Minnesota's 87 county jails.
So it's an independent, essentially, set of eyes that can look at a situation and maybe provide clearer judgment.
Absolutely. They have full authority to look into, investigate, and address complaints. And oftentimes, they may look into a complaint and find that the services were delivered just as they should have been and appropriately, and that's also a benefit to departments. But I think it does provide needed relief for people who are incarcerated to have that independent ear to look into these issues.
Last week, Governor Walz signed into law reforms pertaining to the use of solitary confinement, which can adversely affect the mental health of inmates in prison. Until now, Minnesota has had no laws specifically addressing the use of this practice. So what is this change and why is it important?
Well, I mean, we know, segregation is really, for lack of a better word, becomes a way of addressing conduct within a prison system, which itself is intended to address inappropriate or unlawful conduct. So that's one of the mechanisms that we use to control behavior within the facilities. And really what this does is it created certain check-in mechanisms and reporting mechanisms so that people can't be allowed to fester, so to speak, inside restrictive housing or segregation. That mental health people have to do check-ins. There's documentation of that. A plan to get people back to general population is developed. And it includes reporting both to me from the staff at our correctional facilities, and then ultimately our department reporting to the legislature in terms of what progress we're making around addressing this. So these reforms really were about kind of setting structure, and that we think will ultimately result in better services to people who are incarcerated.
Recently, a decision was made to redistribute wardens throughout the state. So 5 wardens will transfer to new facilities from where they have been, and 2 associate wardens will be promoted. This is a lot of change. What is the impetus for this?
Well, I think one of the things, again, you come in from the outside and you start to say, look, we have incredible wardens and we have, amazing experiences. And yet what can oftentimes happen is we don't cross-germinate well. And really what is the intention and what has been the history and what is done in many states around the country is that wardens on maybe it's 3-5 years, there's going to be some movement. And so that the experiences that they have, the leadership skills that they bring can really affect that new facility. And it's a fresh set of eyes on what's happening operationally. And we think this is really important to develop our leadership. Not just of those wardens, but of the people that they lead. And so we think this is just an incredible opportunity and an important one. And I think sets in place really what we think is important to developing leadership into the future.
Well, and you came in with a fresh set of eyes, and now you're sort of transferring that around the state. In recent years, there's been talk of building more prisons or expanding prisons due to the increasing size of the incarcerated population. Where are we now in terms of our prison population in Minnesota?
We're at capacity. And I think this is a key and critical juncture for our state. And I think we're going to see this coming, developing, and conversations happening, beginning this summer and into the next legislative session. What is our goal? Do we want to build more capacity and build more prisons, which we know are costly and challenging? Or are there ways that we can manage people who offended in our communities effectively without impacting public safety? And I think these are the questions that we're going to be struggling with as a state, as states are across the country. And even the federal government has given a lot more attention to this very issue. Correctional incarceration is costly, and we have to be mindful of that.
Yes. Commissioner Schnell, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.